Sleep in heavenly peace.
I've been preaching a 4-week sermon series this year through the first four Sundays of Advent following Silent Night, this year being the 200th anniversary of the publishing of Silent Night. The words were actually written 2 years previously, but it was set to music and published 200 years ago, 1818, to this year. But there's a problem with Silent Night and the Advent sermon series. There's only 4 verses, and there's 5 sermons, counting tonight. So I began to pray and think, and in a conversation I had with my son Davis, we were talking about this truth about the soul feeling its worth. And as I gave serious thought to this, it dawned on me, in these simple words, it tells us why Christ had to come. So I chose the first verse, or actually part of the first verse of the hymn, O Holy Night. O Holy Night, the stars are brightly shining. It is the night of our dear Savior's birth. Long lay the world in sin and error pining, till he appeared and the soul felt its worth. A thrill of hope the weary world rejoices, for yonder breaks a new and glorious morn. In the year 1847, a priest in a small town in France went to his friend, Placide Cappeau, and he asked him to write a song for that coming year's Christmas Eve Mass. So in 1847, riding a horse-drawn carriage on his way to Paris, Mr. Cappeau composed the poem that we now know as O Holy Night. He had the words, but he didn't have a melody, so he approached his friend who was a composer. This man happened to be a Jewish man. He asked him to write a melody for that great hymn that we now sing and we hear every Christmas. So in 1847, at a Christmas Eve Mass, this little church in France, for the very first time, the people sang this great epic hymn, O Holy Night. Sadly to say, shortly after, Placide Cappeau decided to leave the faith and join a French Revolution movement that was going on that was based in atheism. The church was pulled into a wrestling match because this hymn was very well liked by many people, but this man had become apostate. What were they going to do? The church and the state agreed to outlaw the hymn. They refused to let it be sung in any of the Catholic churches, which at that time were all the churches in France at the time. For a decade, this hymn was kept from being sung, but the ordinary people of France would not be denied. It wasn't sung in any form of formal liturgy to 1857, but it was very popularly sung by the common people throughout all of France. In 1857, a man by the name of John Sullivan Dwight got a hold of the song. He was an American. John Sullivan Dwight was part of the abolitionist movement in America, the movement to outlaw and ban slavery in the United States. And he heard that line. It stirred his heart. Chains he will break, for the slave is our brother, and in his name all oppression shall cease. He grabbed onto this hymn and then began to share it among the churches, especially in the northern United States, and the people began to sing the hymn. Their declaration was that if Jesus has come and he's freed humanity, who are we to keep people enslaved? The hymn was used slowly but surely as part of the movement that broke the chains that too many Americans had grown fond of, used to, and dependent as a country. Now let's fast forward quickly to 1906. There was a man named Reginald Fedizin, a former colleague of Thomas Edison. He was in his office one evening experimenting with the microphone and the telegraph. He thought he might have discovered that right way to speak into a microphone and it go out over radio waves. He wasn't sure, but he had to do an experiment, so he grabbed the Bible off his desk and read that famous narrative which we heard part of tonight. In the days of Caesar Augustus, a decree went out that all the world should be registered. And it goes on to talk about the birth of Christ and the glory of God and peace on earth. For the first time, voices were heard over radio. Now, the only people back then that had radios on were ships at sea and ships on the rivers, because they were listening for Morse code. They kept a radio turned on in the pilot's house or the navigation room, and it was just static, unless they heard dot, 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 dash, 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 and letters, and they began to transcribe the Morse code. Wouldn't it be amazing to all of a sudden hear a voice over a radio speaker you had never heard a sound out of? Well, when he finished reading the narrative from the Gospel of Luke, he picked up his violin and began to play. So guess what the very first song ever played over the radio was? Happy Birthday? Jingle Bells? No. It was Oh Holy Night. Can you imagine? You're on a ship and you're cruising across the sea, and all you really hear is the drone, of the engines running, and you feel the movement of the ship, and you were to hear that beautiful tune being played over a violin, declaring the worth of humanity. Listen to the words of that beautiful Christmas hymn. Oh, holy night, the stars are brightly shining. It is the night of our dear Savior's birth. Long lay the world in sin and error pining. That's meaning we're really trapped, and what he's wanting to communicate, till he appeared and the soul felt its worth. A thrill of hope the weary world rejoices, and yonder breaks a glorious and new morning, saying this is the dawning of a new day. Not just a baby is being born, but the world, life, the human race is being redefined. A re-invitation is being given by God into what it means to be a human being. Fall on your knees. Oh, hear the angels' voices. Truly, he has taught us to love one another. His law of love and his gospel is peace. Chains shall he break, for the slave is our brother. And his name all oppression shall cease. Sweet hymns of joy in this grateful chorus we raise. With all of our hearts we praise his holy name. Since Christ came that your soul should feel worth, I only want to ask one important question tonight. Have you come to understand the love of God for you? Not for the world, but for you. So that your soul feels its worth. And much as we'd like to say we've got multiple choices on that, many of us, it really comes down to one of two things. Either we say, yes, thank you, Lord, I sense the worthiness. You have valued me. Or other times, for other people, it's like, most people, but I'm not sure about me. And the more people I talk to, I've been a pastor 25 years, the more I've shared my life with people, and people have shared my life with them, there seems to be this struggle that goes on. Some never feel this sense. Some feel it at times, but other times it seems to leave. Do I really have this sense that I am loved by God, I belong by God, and I have worth because of the worth God puts upon me? I think there are two problems that cause us to struggle with finding the worth of our souls. The first is based in a faulty narrative. Did you know you have a tape player that's playing in your mind? Actually, it's a tape player is too simple. A massive super duper computer that guides you to make your decisions and guides you on how you understand yourself. Being around people with dementia has made this stronger for me. Being around people who began to lose their memory, I began to see how the human mind works. That every little decision we make is based upon our minds accessing thousands of memories all at once and making simple decisions. And then people, when they lose their memory ability, life gets so hard. You know, simple thing is encountering someone on the sidewalk and saying hi. When one doesn't have a memory, that becomes much more complicated. Through the work of a psychiatrist named Eric Berne, he invented a whole school of thought in psychology called transactional analysis, was trying to help people understand what were the tapes, what are the tapes playing in your head, in my head. And that was made even more popular by another doctor, Dr. Hugh Musseldine. And we have to ask this question, what are the tapes playing in our minds? Because what people tell us when we're growing up, especially people we value and trust, we believe, whether it's true or not. Have you ever read any of those interviews by a supermodel, one of those, they're just amazing human beings, just perfect looking head to toe? And he or she says they're not really good looking. You want to say, are you blind? You make your living doing this. Well, what do you mean? These tapes playing in our head that when we're growing up, people say, you're ugly, you're not smart, you'll never amount to anything. Son, if there's a wrong way to do it, you always find it. Why did God put you in my life? You ain't worth the salt in your bread, boy. And no, I'm not making this up. I've had people tell me all about those harsh words. And much as we wish they didn't, they stay with us. It shines a light on how sacred the role of being a parent is, a grandparent, or aunt or uncle. That might be that tonight you're feeling that narrative. On a head level, you know it's true. You are loved by God. You are worthy. You are valued. But it seems like on the heart level, it's like there's an asterisk in John 3:16 and your name is at the bottom that you got left out. That surely, maybe not me. Now God says yes. And the second problem where we struggle is in our faulty theology. See, there's a difference between having worth and being worthy. The Bible's really clear that because of our sinfulness, we are not worthy. Romans 3:23. All have sinned and fall short of the glory of God. Romans 3:10. None is righteous, no is one, no one is. So you are unworthy. But we need to flip the coin around and see that God says, yes, I know that, but you are worth it. That's why I sent Christ to you. See, we equate being worthy and having worth as being the same. But when you think about it, it doesn't have to be that way. You can ascribe worth to another human being in your life that may be unworthy of your worth. You see what I'm saying? And that, on a much grander scale, that is what God does for us. And that is why it was important that Christ came to us. You need to realize that you are loved. How much are you loved? As Brian prayed in an offertory prayer, you are loved enough that Christ would come for you. You know, we say this saying, and I don't think we often realize what we're saying, so I'm not trying to criticize people, and sometimes I say it too, so I'm not trying to throw stones here. We say, the best part of Christmas is the children, right? Watching them open those gifts, and their face lights up, and I've got pictures of my kids holding things above their heads and running around with them. It's so great. Why don't adults enjoy Christmas gifts as much? And we're like, okay, well, this is a nice gift, but I got to see what everybody have to do. They like my gifts. Is that what holds us back? Wow, they didn't give me a very good gift. The child just loves the gift. Listen to the way the Apostle John invites us into his version of the Christmas story. His version is from heaven's perspective. Listen to the way he talks about the coming, the King, the Christ, the Messiah. He says, the true light which gives light to everyone was coming into the world. He said, not everyone received him. Not everyone welcomed him. That's an understatement. But he goes on to write, to all who did receive him, who believed in his name, he gave them the right to become the children of God. So that's who we are to be, the children of God. There's that popular contemporary Christian song that we hear on the Christian stations. I'm no longer a slave to fear. I am a child of God. I like that song because it reminds me of the story that I live into, that God deems me as being valuable enough to give us life and make us no longer orphans, but his children. That's huge. That is really huge. And it says further on in the first chapter of John, those who are born not of blood, nor a will of the flesh, nor the will of man, but of God. Then in the book of Ephesians, Paul is going on to pick up this idea, and he says that God did it because of his good pleasure. He wanted to do that. I love that. Nobody is greater than God. I think we can agree on that, right? So who told him to send us the Son so that we could be saved? He did it out of his good pleasure. This isn't just a story about a baby being born. It's a story about God making a declaration that he loves you, that you have value and worth. And then John goes further on to say, verse 14, and the Word became flesh and dwelt among us. Literally in Greek, it's the idea of Jesus kind of coming and moving in your neighborhood. He wants to be present in your life. And then he goes on to say, we have seen his glory, the glory of the only Son from the Father, full of grace and truth. Have you received the Christmas gift that was made yours at Christmas? The gift of God moving into your life as you have said yes to him. We're going to be taking the Lord's Supper here in just a second here at the communion rail, and you may say that tonight. Whatever has been holding you back, you can leave that here and receive the amazing grace of God into your life. Or maybe this whole talk I've been giving here for the last 15 minutes about you knowing your worth, you're feeling your worth before God, has made you feel kind of funny because it never quite goes all the way down. I want to ask you, I want to encourage you to ask God to do a continuing, growing work in you, to enable you to be able to feel His sense of delight and love and value of you. Are you worth it? God says yes. That's why He sent His Son